So the worst WrestleMania moment of all time is, of course, WrestleMania 9, when Hulk Hogan decided the main event and the whole show was about him. He screwed over Bret Hart, Yokozuna, and Mr. Fuji, I suppose. But someone else already took that because I got to the list late. So I'm going to pick a more off-the-cuff one, but I didn't think it was very good, and now we look back and we're like, man, what we were doing. And that was WrestleMania where it was Randy Orton versus Bray Wyatt, and Alexa Bliss came out of a big box, and Bray Wyatt came out of a big box, and Michael Cole called it a box-like structure, which is still a joke that I go back to today. Just don't understand it, overthought it. I would imagine that Bray Wyatt's idea was watered down by other people in the creative team. I don't know that, but it was just so weird, and it was so strange. And this was after, Bray Wyatt had been burned alive, or whatever the fluff we did, and Alexa Bliss turned on Bray Wyatt, or the Fiend as he was at the time, and none of it was ever explained. It just felt like we were making ideas up week by week. And again, listen to who was in this match. Randy Orton, one of the best of all time. Bray Wyatt, who was just operating on a completely different plane from everybody else. Alexa Bliss, who comes back at the Royal Rumble, gets a massive mega pop, and this is what we chose to do, and it baffles my brain. I almost thought about putting, was it WrestleMania 33, when they had the graphics on the rampway, and Randy had a snake and it looked like sperm. I mean, we talked about that on Ups and Downs as well, but let's not talk about it now. So I just don't think Randy Orton needs to be in these bizarre situations. And actually, that was the Bray Wyatt match as well, wasn't it? Because they did the overhead projector stuff into the ring, which also looked like semen. So maybe it's just bad memories of all of that. And of course, there are way worse moments, but the rest of the team snapped them up. So this is one that's not going to get mentioned. And it wasn't good, and it was bad. And a feud between Randy Orton and Bray Wyatt should have been way better on both occasions, but it wasn't, and I don't put any of the blame on either of those two people. So let's try and give them some, whatever the word would be, I can't remember now, but some whoop up the tuchus. But let's just try and give them some love, right? Which they don't often get for this mess, and it had nothing to do with them.
For as long as I live, I will never comprehend unless I go to the most cynical part of my mind. I will never comprehend why it took Triple H at WrestleMania 19, 23 entire seconds to pin Booker T. The fact that he pins Booker T and therefore wins after the really rancid storyline leading into it is itself really, really not cool. It's very tempting to be ultra cynical about why that storyline played out like it did, but let's just be really cynical instead of completely ultra cynical. Let's just say he kind of knew he was floundering as the top heel in 2003. His matches were critically acclaimed, not. He was absolutely bad, terrible at the box office, year on year declines with him on top. Let's just say he thought, I will do something that's real cheap and nasty just to try and juice up my character, okay? Maybe that's the nicest explanation. That is the nicest explanation. But it's the nature of the spot as well. What happens in a sort of traditional US style match often is that the heel will cheat. The heel will therefore take advantage and work over the babyface's leg or arm or whatever after carving like a really nefarious opening. And then the babyface will hit his signature or finishing move, but because he's selling the damage that was done to him unfairly, crawl over, make the cover. But for Christ's sake, he hit his finish. It would have been 1, 2, 3, but that dickhead heel has just really worked him over unfairly. Why did Triple H take that amount of time to pin Booker T? I mean, it's an ugly story with the worst possible finish. I'm talking around it. I think you might know what I'm getting at. It's despicable, even in the context of fiction, an absolute atrocity of a result on the back of an incredibly dull match, the likes of which he was crapping out regularly, that didn't justify his spot. Why did he have it?
The worst WrestleMania moment ever is Triple H and Booker T, but that's already been taken. So instead, I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story. I was lucky enough for my first ever WrestleMania to go to WrestleMania 35. The women main evented. It was long overdue, but fantastic to see Charlotte Flair, Ronda Rousey, Becky Lynch main eventing WrestleMania. Now come with me in my time machine 10 years prior to that. It's the 25th anniversary of WrestleMania. It's not. It's WrestleMania 25. And women's wrestling looks very different, but we're going to have a big celebration of it, and we are going to crown Miss WrestleMania with stars from the past, stars from the present, maybe even stars from the future in it. And who's going to play them out so none of them get their entrances? It's Kid Rock. Oh no, it started really badly this, but don't worry, you've got some amazing names in there. You've got Beth Phoenix, you've got Gail Kim, who never got what she deserved in WWE in my opinion. You've got current stars like the Bella Twins, you've got Lay Cool in there. I mean, for Christ's sake, you could even give it to bloody Natalia for me ahead of... And I liked him. I think he's a funny guy, to be honest. Yeah. Right? But Santina Marella being crowned Miss WrestleMania was kind of the tipping point for me. WrestleMania 25, aside from what? Punk winning Money in the Bank and obviously Taker HBK. Not a great show, but this was a real moment. Like, fair play to Triple H and Randy Orton stealing the spotlight away from this from being the worst thing that happened at WrestleMania 25. But in terms of a specific moment, like, what are we doing? It's mad to think. If you'd have said to someone in that moment, 10 years later, the women are going to main event WrestleMania, they would have laughed in your face. Ridiculous. But like Santino, it's funny, and Cobra and stuff's quite good still. So, not all bad.
But it's Triple H versus Booker T.
Yeah, it's Triple H Booker. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the one Sidgwick talked about. But if there was to be a second after the atrocity of WrestleMania 19, I would have to go with a similar atrocity at WrestleMania 34, that being the main event between Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns. Brackets general, the whole thing. There are several chapter points in the tail end of the Vince McMahon creative era of WWE where you can just kind of signpost it as the end of everything. The end of everything you might have loved as a kid, the end of everything you might have even enjoyed as an adult. Confirmation that he was finished, WWE was dead and it never coming back until it did. But, you know, there's like lots of different ones and there's lots of terrible characters, terrible storylines. But there was something about two of those things culminating in the main event of WrestleMania in front of a crowd that hated all of it, that just seemed to sum up where we were as sort of ex-WWE fans, I guess, at the time. Brock Lesnar, I think, hits Roman Reigns with 6 F5s that Roman Reigns is able to kick out of. So you're watching the Paul Heyman formula that had once been super successful die in front of you. Fans hated every single kick out. They would have happily taken Brock Lesnar beating Roman Reigns with 1 because, of course, the point at the time was that the fans were never, ever going to accept the Roman Reigns babyface. When the 6 F5s weren't enough, out they went at the floor, through tables. Still didn't matter. The match effectively didn't even exist. The fans were just booing what they thought was an inevitable Roman Reigns title win and with us never taking any of what they were watching to heart at all. Brock Lesnar then takes his elbow and goes coast to coast on Roman Reigns' head to give Roman Reigns the big bloody moment. It was as if they were trying to replicate Stone Cold Steve Austin bleeding out at WrestleMania 13 in the best match ever in what basically existed as this sort of Black Lodge comparison for one of the nicest things and most amazing wrestling things you've ever seen in your life. Roman Reigns bleeds, he screams, and loses. So not only have the fans thought that they've seen this guy that was supposed to be dying in front of you come out successful, he's then lost anyway. So they've booed the duration of the match, got ostensibly what they would have wanted in Brock Lesnar winning, and then realised, well, we just hated that as well. We hate all of this, and booed it too. Of course, it followed Brock Lesnar throwing the Universal title at Vince McMahon and Shane McMahon in Gorilla after the fact. Even he was kind of like just appalled with the performance he'd put in as just this festival of just garbage played out. Again, 6-7 hours deep because we were still on the one night deluxe length edition WrestleManias. It was all completely finished. There was no way back from it, or so it seemed, at least at the time. In years and years and years of low ebbs, I think the grandest stage laid the site for one of the lowest of them all. But it's Triple H and Booker T, obviously. But yeah, I just would never ever want to relive those long WrestleMania main events ever again, but especially not that one.
Well, it's quite obviously Triple H versus Booker T, but I went for someone that just made me personally really miserable watching it live in the flesh as it played out. One of the most vibes-off matches in WWE history, in my opinion, is Roman Reigns versus The Undertaker at WrestleMania 33 in 2017. What a colossal failure this thing was on every conceivable level. Obviously, we were in kind of like the last couple of years of the major failed babyface push for Roman Reigns. Actually, we're right smack bang in the middle of it, really. Of these years of swimming against the tide that will be forgotten about when the documentaries come out in 10 years. None of this stuff's going to be covered, so watch this video instead of your Fed Work documentary. But like those it was the abyss. The abyssal years of WWE, the late 2010s. So you had this combination of the failed babyface that nobody wanted to see pushed to the moon, and you had the that with the Undertaker, who was absolutely thrashed, just completely cooked at this stage. No business whatsoever working 22-minute WrestleMania main event singles matches. And look, later on, a couple of years later, Undertaker did the Graveyard Dog stuff, which was a lot of fun and a far more sensible role. But the combination of that created just one of the weirdest, I wasn't there, but like watching it, one of the weirdest crowd vibes I've ever heard come through my speakers in my life. As you watch Roman Reigns try to wrestle around the Undertaker's complete crapness, because he's done at this stage, for 20 straight minutes, trying to create all the motion for him. The Undertaker enters one of the saddest displays of his career, where it's blatantly obvious he can't keep up with this stuff anymore. Roman Reigns wins, and it's like, okay, well, the whole thing was just an unenjoyable death march to that happening. Everyone knew he was going to beat The Undertaker at WrestleMania. It was just another feather in the cap for this stupid push that nobody enjoyed back when he was a face. And then we get the whole fiasco with the Taker leaving his boots and gloves, and he kisses Michelle McCool and he leaves his coat, and it's like, oh, is the Undertaker retired? No, he was back a few months later. What a colossal waste of time. If anything sums up just how out of touch that stupid, brain-rotted billionaire old man was in his last few years of running WWE. This match between a babyface everyone hated, an old codger who couldn't go anymore, and then a fake retirement angle with a match result that everybody knew was coming but nobody wanted to. It's an omni-shambles. I mean, it's Booker T versus Triple H, but this made me miserable. This one right here.
All I need to say is Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania 9, total BS. For the first time in WrestleMania history, it looked like a Mania was going to be closing out with zero Hulk Hogan involvement in the main event. By this point, we'd had Hulk Hogan headline 7 of the first 8 WrestleManias. And even when the WrestleMania 4 main event was Randy Savage against the $1 Million Man, Hulk Hogan still had to be involved and stole part of the Macho Man spotlight. I mean, even the excellent Randy Savage and Ric Flair world title match at WrestleMania 8, that was dumped in the mid-card, also Hulk Hogan can main event against Sid. But WrestleMania 9 was going to be different, man. It was all different. This was the start of the new generation. This was a Hulk Hogan who dropped out of the world title picture and was instead teaming with brother Brutus the Barber Beefcake, to chase for tag team gold in the middle of the card. This time, WrestleMania was all about Bret Hart defending the WWF title against Mr. Fuji's Yokozuna. And this truly felt like a changing of the guard had taken place here. I mean, even as a Bret Hart fan, a huge Bret Hart fan, Yokozuna winning here was fine. Yoko had been portrayed as a monster since debuting in late 1992, won the Royal Rumble in 1993 as well. And hey, whether it was Bret or Yoko who walked out of WrestleMania 9 with that world title, at least we'd finally ditched the tied shtick of Hulkamania, brother. Yeah, that's what we all thought at the time. And then what happened. Yoko did beat Bret, thanks to some salt in the eyes from Mr. Fuji. But just as Yoko was celebrating, what's that? Who's that? Is it a bird? Is it a plane? Oh no, brother, it's Terry to the rescue. Yeah, a swift challenge to Hulk from Mr. Fuji, an impromptu 22-second match later. And who walks out of WrestleMania 9 as the top dog? Yeah, in a show main evented by Bret Hart versus Yokozuna. Of course, it was Hulk Hogan walking out as a 5-time WWF champ. It made Bret look like an idiot. It made Fuji look like an idiot. It made Yokozuna look like an idiot. It made us fans hoping for something different from this apparent new generation. We look like idiots. Total BS. Watching as a kid back then, that was my thoughts, and still is to this very, very day. As the Iron Sheik always said, flub the Hulk Hogan.
So there have been a lot of incredible WrestleMania moments over the years, been ones that sent chills up and down your spine, all that kind of stuff, but there's also been a lot of crap ones, a lot of bad ones, a lot of terrible ones that just leave your eyes rolling, and one that springs to mind for me whenever I think of this kind of subject of just bad WrestleMania moments was one that went down at WrestleMania 37, and that's obviously, like 4 years ago now? Time is flying on by, but it was infuriating at the time, because obviously the year coming up to this had been the pandemic, and it had been an awful time for just people in real life, like out there in the world. It'd been a terrible time. Watching WWE had its moments. It was a good escape at like sometimes, but then there were other times where you just wanted to pull your eyes out and pop them. But somebody who was a real shining light throughout the pandemic was Bayley. Bayley was great. Like, she'd become a heel obviously just before things had all kicked off, and then she'd really found herself during this period and just was irritating Michael Cole and doing some great work alongside and against Sasha Banks. Like, they were doing some incredible stuff on SmackDown. So coming into WrestleMania, a lot of people were thinking, yeah, she's finally going to get this big, like, awesome moment in front of all these people. Well, as many people as they could get in Raymond James Stadium, as it was like one of the first like live fan attended events that we'd had post COVID, or like during COVID, whatever it is. We thought she was going to get this great moment, and instead she was on hosting duties, I believe. She was just there, just being a character on screen. It was fine, but you were just hoping, you were crossing your fingers. You were thinking, oh, maybe they did get her in like a last minute match or something, like against Becky Lynch. You could be returning, something like that. That'd be cool. But no, instead what happened is she interrupted Titus O'Neil and Hulk Hogan. That's its own thing that was quite questionable at that WrestleMania. She did that, and then she got interrupted by the Bella Twins, who were being inducted into the Hall of Fame that year. Like, that was happening. That was a thing. They interrupted, and they were just like going back and forth on the mic a little bit. Bayley made fun of them. I think she said one of them like Elmo, and then said something about John Cena to Nikki Bella, like that kind of stuff. It was all a bit weird. And then they beat her up and threw her down the ramp, and everyone booed, because of course they did, because this Bayley character pretty much carried the women's division throughout the pandemic and been this force of entertainment that just brightened your days in some of the darkest days in recent memory that we as wrestling fans and we as people had experienced. So it was just watching this person, like, their reward for all this was to get their asses whooped and like sent flying down a stage, and then Nikki Bella and like the Bellas, Nikki Bella and Brie Bella, were dancing away with Hulk Hogan and Titus O'Neil, and it was just really mean-spirited, and you could see what they were thinking. WWE, like, oh, the legends beat up the bad guy, everyone cheers, happy ever after. But in this particular scenario, people like cheering the bad guy because the bad guy was really entertaining, and they loved the person who'd been putting in all the time and effort, and they wanted to celebrate that person. But instead, they just got beaten up, and it was bad. I was angry. I was just fuming, sat there at stupid o'clock in the morning watching this. I was not happy with how they treated my Bayley, and yeah, it's a bad moment. It's a bad moment. Probably one of the worst ones that I can think of in my mind. So that's why it's here.